welcome to You Make Sense. This podcast is a manual to understanding your human experience so that you can navigate the world with freedom, ease, empowerment, and create the life that you desire. Remember, you make sense, all parts, always. So in this episode, we're going to talk about why it's so challenging for so many of us to slow down in our lives. And I also am going to talk about how slowing down is actually the answer for us to step into the bigger lives that we're wanting and to receive more, which if you're, listening to this podcast for the first time, you might be saying, how is it possible to do less and receive more? We're going to talk all about that in this episode today. The first thing that I want to name is that in our world, we're given a message that our value is in our productivity. And so, sure, we're going to talk about trauma in a minute and how our past informs our present, but it's also really important to name how our environment really influences the state of our nervous system. And so if we've been receiving since the moment we got here that, especially in Western society, that when we achieve, we get adoration, right? This starts in school. When I do really well in school, I am rewarded. When I achieve more in my work, I'm rewarded. When I go above and beyond at work and I don't have boundaries and I'm responding to emails at 9 p.m., I'm rewarded. So we get a lot of positive reinforcement from our doing and from being in a place of constant stress and overriding our nervous system and what our system actually needs. And we might get love, we might get attention, belonging, financial reward. We might get furthered in our career. You get the idea. When we are in this place of chronic doing, we've actually gotten a lot of reward for it. And we've been told that is verbally or non-verbally by society, that is our value. And so it can be a really challenging thing to come out of this place. It can feel really countercultural in a lot of ways to say, you know what, I'm going to actually value community. I'm going to value connection. I'm going to value laughter. I'm going to value play and creativity and all of these other wonderful things that actually might not have a result, a productivity result associated with them that the world can consume. And so it really is, in a lot of ways, a way of being countercultural to step away from that. And our systems are going to say, I don't think that's safe. I can't tell you how many years I spent trying to slow down. I was complaining about how much I was working. I was complaining about how busy I was. And yet I was constantly on this hamster wheel where the busyness never seemed to change. And I know so many people who are in that place. And by the way, I'm somebody that said that. And I own my own business, meaning I actually get to create the things that are occurring. And yet I was constantly on this hamster wheel. So for many of us, it can feel like an impossibility to actually create the change. So I want to talk about why. And then like we do in all episodes, we're going to talk about what we can actually do about it. So the root of this is something called our sympathetic nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system is a state of self-protection in our autonomic nervous system, and it's all about the mobilizing or doing. So our system is saying, I don't think we're safe right now. Therefore, we should try to do something to evade the danger that we think is present in order to ensure your safety and survival. And so when we experience trauma in the past, what our nervous system often does, if it thinks that experience is dangerous for us, it will resource or use this sympathetic nervous system. And if it was able to do the trick, if it was able to actually evade the threat in some way and get us through that experience, then our nervous system says, you know what? The sympathetic system really is quite good for us. I think we should keep using that sympathetic system to ensure your safety. Because remember, the thing about trauma is, if it has not yet been resolved, it's not a thing of the past. It's a thing of the perpetual present, meaning our nervous system is thinking that the past is not over, that it's still happening now. And so if that's the case, and your nervous system said, we use the sympathetic system, by the way, there's 2 other states of self-protection it could choose from, but we use the sympathetic system, it worked, let's keep using that. And so we find ourselves navigating our adult lives, and even though we're in safety, we're still resourcing this state of self-protection. And just for anyone who hasn't listened to previous episodes, when I talk about the states in the nervous system, definitely do that. But the sympathetic nervous system is where things like anxiety, worry, frustration, fear, terror, rage, racing thoughts live. We have an overwhelm of energy in our bodies. We can't relax. We can't sit still. And I think of it like the porridge isn't too cold. It's not just right. It is too hot. It feels like there's a ticking time bomb. There's never enough time. I have to go in order to ensure my safety. Now, the thing is, when we experience trauma, it's an overwhelm of stimulation in our bodies, overwhelm of energy that leaves us feeling out of control. And our sympathetic nervous system is really a beautiful way to gain external control when we feel out of control inside. So when we, the traumatic experience or the things in the past are over, but our nervous system doesn't think it's over, then it's saying, I don't feel safe inside or safe in the world, but if I use this system, I can have some semblance of control. And so what we do is we use our sympathetic nervous system to try to control our external circumstances. We're going. If I can just manage this thing exactly right, if I can just have more success, do more of this thing, then maybe I'll be okay. And not only that, but it supports us to not have to be present to what is. If I am constantly going all of the time, what a beautiful way to have to avoid what's happening in my body. I did this as a kid. I was trapped in a very unsafe, dangerous home. So what I learned was, well, the way out is if I join every single club at school, if I do every single thing, I don't have to be in this home as often. So I used my sympathetic system to mobilize and do in order for me to not only stay out of that home, but to stay out of my body. That was an overwhelming place to be. And then what happens is we leave those experiences and those patterns are still showing up in our adult lives. So another reason why we might find ourselves struggling to slow down is because of our protective parts. We have lots of episodes on parts work as well. Essentially, when we experience things in the past that are overwhelming for us, and there was no one to create the safety that we needed to actually protect us when those things occurred, we developed these brilliant internal protector parts. And so think of it this way. Let's say you were bullied in school. Your caregivers told you, oh, they're bullying you because they like you, or they told you you were making something out of nothing. They weren't really protecting me. And so what I had to do was develop a part within myself that could protect me from those experiences. So maybe what I learned to do was become an achiever because I was bullied and I was told I wasn't smart or whatever. So I just started achieving all the time. And so this protector part used the sympathetic nervous system to go in order for me to fit in order for me to have a sense of love or adoration. And that protector part is dead set on ensuring that I never have to feel the pain I felt when I was young. And these protector parts will go to the ends of the earth to ensure that. So for a lot of us, we have these, a perfectionist part is a protector part that often uses the sympathetic nervous system to ensure our safety. The golden child, if we have that showing up, can be a protective part where I have to be the best at everything. The part of us that feels like it's never quite enough, so I set a bar and then I get there and I raise the bar. All of those are protective parts that resource the sympathetic nervous system to always keep us going, striving, and certainly think that if they stopped doing their job, we wouldn't be okay. So the result of all of this can be that it becomes very challenging for us to slow down in our lives. And we can complain, like I said, like I was doing, complain about it and say, oh, life is just so busy. I wish it wasn't so busy. Why is it like this? And our parts are going to say, you know what? I don't really care that you don't have space for other things in your life. I don't really care that this doesn't feel good to you because I love the younger parts so much. I have to make sure they never feel that pain again. And your sympathetic system is saying, and I don't want you to have to be in your body where all of that overwhelm is. So although we would like you to have that full life, we don't think it's safe for that to happen. And so the result of that is no matter how hard we try, oftentimes we feel like we cannot actually change what's occurring, or we feel like we can't get off the hamster wheel. And so the result or long-term effects of this is we start to experience things like burnout because our bodies can only handle a certain amount of being in a chronic stress response. And so what happens is burnout, by the way, is simply going from your sympathetic nervous system to what's called your dorsal vagal complex. So your system says, I can't mobilize like this anymore, and then we shut down. And that's where chronic fatigue occurs as well. We also develop chronic illness. Why? Because being in a chronic state of dysregulation or in a chronic stress response creates illness in our body. Not because we're broken or we're weak, but because when you're in dysregulation, all of your organ systems are not functioning optimally. Think of it like they have less of the resources they actually need to thrive. And over time, if that's happening for a decade or even a few years or even a year, your system might say, I can't do this anymore. And we start to get sick a lot or develop illness. And the other thing is, as I named, we get trapped on this hamster wheel. And for many of us, we might think of the things that we want in our lives. Think of your purpose, for example. You might say, like, I really want to take it to the next level, but the next level is going to require me to have time to be creative so I can actually, think about the things that I want to bring into fruition. Or it's going to require me to be making connections with colleagues and within my field. And guess what that means? It means you're going to have time to go have coffee with somebody and to have a meeting with them and not just be incessantly working around the clock. And if your sympathetic system is saying it's not safe to do that, then we're going to be trapped in this cycling of always doing and producing, which won't allow you to come into this next level or iteration of the thing you're wanting. The same goes in your relationships, by the way. A lot of us have this doer part inside of our relationship. Go, do. And we're focused on all the making our house nice and going to all of the events and but not actually focusing on deeper intimacy, which requires slowing, or play, which requires slowing, or creativity together, which requires slowing. So in order to have a thriving life, a thriving body, a thriving life, thriving relationships, thriving work, we really have to teach our system that it is safe to begin slowing, sometimes for the first time. So I want to talk about how we actually come off this hamster wheel, out of this chronic place of sympathetic, so that we can live the full life that we deeply desire. The first thing that we have to focus on is building our capacity for slowing. Our nervous system is a show not tell experience, meaning our nervous system needs to be shown that it is actually safe to slow down. It won't take our word for it. And rightfully so, right? This beautiful self-protective system loves you so much that it's saying, hey, I have a whole database of information in the past where it wasn't safe to slow down. And not only that, I have a lot of information about how we've gotten a lot of external positive things from speeding up and from doing all of this from sympathetic. So I don't know if it's safe to actually do it differently. So in order for us to come out of this chronic hamster wheel we're on of being in our sympathetic nervous system and always doing, we have to begin showing our nervous system that it is actually safe for us to live a life that is predominantly anchored in regulation, wherein we are slowing, we are getting all of our needs met, and we're not in that exacerbated place of the sympathetic nervous system. I want to say this, it's really important, is that when we have a lot of data points of how when we were in our sympathetic system and we received a lot of external stuff from that, like love, money, like all the things I named, our nervous system's going to be very tentative and apprehensive about us actually getting those things when we're regulated. In many ways, I used to feel this way. It felt like if I was regulated, it feels like all the balls are going to drop. It's like, what am I going to do? Lay on a beach all day? And like, how are things going to actually happen? So we can have this like really kind of a warped view of what it's going to be like when we're in regulation, because I've predominantly had done everything from this sympathetic place. So we have to show our nervous systems that, hey, when we're in this place of regulation, not only will everything get done, but the truth is more will actually get done. Because when you're regulated, you are actually cueing rather to the world around you that I am open and available to receive. So more things start to magically come towards us. More opportunities start to come towards us. We also have our full brain working and online. So our access to creativity and possibilities is so much higher when we're in regulation, and our ability to accomplish things in smaller windows of time actually goes up. Now, your sympathetic nervous system right now might be listening to me and saying like, I do not believe that. When I'm in sympathetic, I am hustling and that's how I get a lot done. And rightfully so, because you might not yet have data of how this is true. So the work is we have to show our system that that is true. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. The first thing that we have to do, though, is build our capacity for slowing. And that means real life experiences of how we slowed and nothing bad happened. So something simple that you can do is put on a calming song. Any song at all, could even be nature music that really resonates as calming to you or supports a sense of stillness. And what I want you to do is see if you can let the energy of the music have the intention of letting it permeate you and speak to your nervous system. Kind of like it's taking your nervous system's hand and saying, hey, it's okay, just for this 60 seconds or 2 minutes for you to come out of that place of actively doing and come into this place of resting. And music can be a beautiful way to elicit that for us, because our energy can follow or mimic the energy that's around us. So a song is a beautiful way to do that. You could go into nature. So nature is an incredible regulating resource. Research shows that it's profoundly regulating for our nervous system. So feeling your feet on the earth, or like lying on the earth, touching a tree, smelling a flower, going for a walk in the woods, all of those things are going to support your system to come into a calming. Now, as you do this, by the way, your sympathetic system might kick in and say, what are you doing? Go back to work or whatever. Like, we have things to do. And I just want you to notice that. And as you notice it, just see if you can turn back to saying, hey, I know why you're doing this because you don't think I'm safe, and I'm going to show you that it's actually safe to do this. And then just see if you can come back into presence. So when that occurs, I don't want you to think you're doing it wrong. That is definitely going to happen, because your nervous system doesn't yet believe that it's safe for you to come into calming. The more that we have these experiences of slowing, the more they get stored in our database, and our system sees, oh, maybe that is safe. So we want to do it again and again and again. Another thing that we need to do is begin creating disconfirming experiences for ourselves. So a disconfirming experience is where we show our systems that which was done one way in the past or dangerous in the past, it's actually safe now. So what I want you to do is I want you to, and this might not seem like work, but it is doing the work. I want you to engage in something that brings out some playfulness in you. Maybe it's dancing around your house, or watching something funny on TV, or playing a game with a friend, or engaging in anything at all. So it could be play or anything at all that makes you feel a sense of a rest or aliveness. You could go to a spa, get a massage, have dinner with a friend. All of these things that we would classify as good things. So I want you to go do one of those things. And right after it, I want you to see if you can engage in one thing that you have to get done. Anything at all. Could be a work-related thing. It could be, I need to call my accountant about this thing, or the doctor's office, or I need to do something around the house. And what I want you to gauge or notice is how different it is to do that task or do that thing from a place of regulation. Because what we're essentially doing here is we have to show our nervous systems, I actually accomplished that better. It was more enjoyable from this place of regulation. In my work, I used to do this all the time to come out of this place of constant sympathetic doing. So I would engage like in, play with a friend, or I'd go on a hike with a friend on a Saturday. And then right after that, I would do a piece of work. Yes, I used to work almost 7 days a week a long time ago when I was constantly in this sympathetic place. But then I would go do some work. And from that place of feeling nourished by that connection and by nature, all of that work I did was so much easier. I didn't feel, any blocks from it. I didn't feel like I was taking longer than it needed. It actually all got done faster. Specifically, if I wanted to do anything that required my creativity or, a bigger expanding into something bigger in my work. And what that started to do was showed my system, regulation is actually where it's at. The more that I'm regulated, the better everything is. The more that I can expand, the more I can get off of this hamster wheel. So engaging in those disconfirming experiences is absolutely vital. Another thing that we can do that I really invite in is begin, especially around work, seeing if you can stop even 5 or 10 minutes early for a week. And what we need to do is show our nervous system, when I do this, nothing bad happens. And then we do a little bit more. And then I do it again, and nothing bad happens. If you work 7 days a week like I used to, and you think you're just going to go down to working 5 days a week, it's not going to happen. It's going to be too overwhelming for your system. We have to take these tolerable steps. Then it might look like I only work a half a day on a Saturday, or I only work till 7 p.m., and then all the way down to whatever you want that to be, like 4 p.m. So the more that we do that, we take these tolerable steps, the more our system sees, and nothing bad happened. Just know, like I said before, your sympathetic system is going to say something bad will happen when you first take the step. And our job is to tolerate that, just notice it. And the more that you do it, the less that those thoughts come in and that somatic response. Another thing is seeing if you can set even just one boundary with yourself or with your company or the company you work for, or even with a friend. Can I set one boundary that allows me to slow just a little bit more? That may be like, I'm not going to look at my phone past this hour, or I'm not going to respond to emails past this time. And again, your system's going to say, I don't know if that's safe. And the more you do it, the more your system will see nothing bad happens. Another thing is that we want to do is perhaps trying leaving something undone. For me, I was in this place of like everything in my home had to be a certain way. I could never leave dishes in the sink. And that was my sympathetic system always at work. And the truth is, there was always something to do. So I never could rest. And so what we want to practice is building toleration for allowing things to be without having to do them. So again, our system can see all is still well. Now, the last thing that we need to do is we need to get to know that protector part. And I had that doer part that always felt like I was behind in life. Every time I set a goal, I reached the goal, and that part would move the goalpost even higher. And so what needs to happen is we first need to get to know who that part is. And then we need to thank them because, that part of me saved my life. It was the way that I got love in school, how the teachers liked me because I was doing all of these things. And I wasn't getting love at home, so I desperately needed that. And it's the part that got me scholarships because I grew up in poverty, to go to college. And this part did a lot for me, saved my life. And so we don't want to battle that part. We want to thank them. And then we want to begin doing something called unburdening that part, and meaning we take over and let that part know, I am going to ensure that the vulnerable part you are protecting is not hurt in the same way that they were hurt again. I'm going to protect them so you don't have to. Because remember, that doer part, their job is to protect that vulnerable part that feels unlovable or unworthy, and so on and so forth. So the more we can do parts work, and again, thank the protective part, get to know them, and really begin coming to the aid of that young, vulnerable part, being this, ferocious protector of them and loving them in the way they were never loved, the more that protector part relinquishes their job and relinquishes control. And then that part can engage in other things with us like play and creativity and aliveness. And the more that you do all these things, the more your system sees, it's actually not only safe for me to slow and be in my state of regulation, but the truth is, if we want to expand into a big life, into a full life that is filled with so much abundance, we cannot do that from a state of survival. We do that from a state of regulation. And so it might at first feel paradoxical, what I'm saying, but that is what science confirms for us. And when I'm regulated, you'll watch, the magic will happen. More opportunities will arise, more ideas will come to you, and life will flourish in ways that are beyond your wildest dreams. Looking for ways to work with me? There is a waitlist for every program I offer, and one of the benefits is getting access to limited time reduced pricing before it opens to the public. You can find the link in the show notes to learn more. So we're going to go to the Q&A portion of this episode. We have lots of great questions around slowing, so let's get into those.
Hi, Sarah. My name is Erin. My question has to do with difficulty relaxing. I feel like I'm constantly in some type of dysregulated state, fight or flight or freeze. But when I'm not doing anything, that's when I notice I just feel all these things in my body. I'm holding my breath. I'm tense. I can't concentrate on the show. So any tips or thoughts or suggestions around how to just be still and chill and relax, because it'd be really nice to do once in a while. Thank you.
Yeah, it's such a great question. It makes me think of meditating. So meditation is a really wonderful regulating tool that can support us to come into presence, but it's not always the right tool. Specifically, what I mean is a sitting meditation with your eyes closed. Think of it this way. If you're in your sympathetic nervous system and your system thinks that there is a threat at hand, so if it thinks that, someone's chasing you, it's not going to say, yeah, I think it's a good idea to sit down and meditate, right? That would be a terrible move. That wouldn't be adaptive at all. And so if we are in a heightened sympathetic place and then we try to do something that's causing us to not move at all, our sympathetic system usually amps up. So we feel more anxiety. And so if we're in, an increased state of our sympathetic nervous system, an increased experience of it, we want to titrate the experience of slowing. So in meditation, for example, what I would recommend if we're in our sympathetic system is we want to do a walking meditation, or you could literally just move around your home or your yard. You could also do a meditative embodiment movement practice. So like Qigong is a great example of this. Or you could literally put calming music on and just allow your body to move like it's sea kelp, or like water moving. Just seeing if you can let your joints move gently, your body move in the ways that it wants to. All of that is instilling an experience of stillness, but in a way that isn't mimicking immobilization. That's really important to understand. For many of us, our systems, as we come into stillness, our system is reminded of being immobilized in the past when we experienced trauma and being made helpless in the face of overwhelm. So our system is saying, I don't want to be immobilized. So what's really important to remember is that stillness is not immobilization. Stillness has a flexibility to it. Stillness has a movement to it. Stillness has breathing that's occurring. So that's what I want you to think about leaning into. Even while you're sitting on their couch, maybe you doodle while you're sitting on the couch. So at least there's some movement happening. Maybe you can do some bilateral stimulation or tapping, humming while sitting on the couch, or swaying, or standing up for a moment and swaying back and forth. So all of those things are showing our system, hey, it's safe to slow. And the more you come into it in a more titrated way, like I'm saying, then your system will say, okay, maybe this is safe, until we get to a point where we can be in total stillness, meaning not much movement at all. All of that is really, really important to understand and to begin embodying. And also, as I named in this episode, just know that as we step into stillness, our system's going to say, are you sure that's okay? I don't know if that's okay, because it hasn't historically been safe. And so you can guarantee that there might be, as you're leaning into it, you feel good for a minute and then you feel dysregulation. That's all really normal and a part of the process. That's the expand, contract experience of regulating our nervous system. Another thing that I want to say is, as we come into stillness and regulation, it means that we're going to have to be with some of the emotions or embodied experience that we have found ways to not have to be with. So you might start to notice things like sensations in your body, whether they're good sensations or unpleasant sensations. And so our job is to feel into a small amount of that. We don't want to get sucked into it and overwhelmed by it. So a small amount of it, noticing the sensation in my body. I might notice the feeling that's present. And then I want to do something to regulate my nervous system. I have lots of programs that can support you to do that. We'll link some of those in the show notes that you can visit, some foundational stuff that will equip you with somatic therapeutic regulating tools. But there's also things that you have on your own that supports regulation. That's anything that supports you to feel more present here and good. So we feel into the small amount of activation, and then we do something to discharge it or to regulate our systems. The last thing that we want to focus on is getting in contact with what part of me is afraid to slow. And what is that part afraid of? So listen to some of the episodes on parts work, because there's likely a protector part, that doer part that's saying it's not safe to slow. And there's likely a vulnerable part that is really afraid of experiencing what they experienced again. So the more that you can do the parts work and show them this is actually safe now, the more that you can begin regulating through some of the activation in your body and titrate the experience of slowing. And lastly, very importantly, just to reiterate that slowing is not immobilization. And our nervous systems are going to think that at first. So we have to show it that slowing is really different and I have agency in slowing. And the more we do that, the more our nervous systems see, oh, this is safe, one step at a time. So let's go to the next question we have for this episode.
Hello. Okay. Sarah, thank you so much for the podcast. And I guess my question is, I can tell when I get dysregulated, and I kind of work through some body tools to help regulate myself, because I feel it in my chest, right? I get tightness and all that, and then I can be okay for a little while, but then it comes back, and so I don't know if I'm not getting rid of it completely or I'm picking it up. But it's this, this recurring thing that can happen throughout the day. Something triggers me and then I try to work through it. I try to release that using body exercises, but it doesn't necessarily stay away, and it's still there, particularly if I still have to do something, that's with this. So I wanted your assistance with that.
So two things in regards to this question. The first is that regulating our nervous systems and reshaping our vagal tone is an experience of expand and contract. So each of us currently has a shaping of our nervous system. That's called your vagal tone. And that means the predominant way that you experience your nervous system, or the predominant state within your nervous system that you are most acquainted with. So let's say that's your sympathetic system, since that's what we're talking about in this episode, where, having anxiety and being in, having all of that overwhelm of energy and all of those things. So that, I'm going to say my nervous system is shaped at a sympathetic 5, 1 being the least extreme, 10 being the most. So as I regulate my nervous system and reshape it, I'm doing consistent neural exercises, just like this person named. So I do something to regulate. That's called a neural exercise. Think of it like a rep at the gym. As I do that, I'm beginning to reshape my nervous system. It's a slow process, but actually happens quicker than you might think. Meaning the progression of it happens quite quickly when we do consistent neural exercises. Now, as you do a neural exercise, you might notice your nervous system comes into regulation more, or that tightness in the chest goes away and, I feel a little bit better. That's an expansion. So your nervous system is saying, maybe we are safe. But oftentimes after that, it says, actually, I don't know if we're safe, because we have decades of it not being safe to be in regulation. So I don't know. And that's what I call a contraction. So we go from, I feel a little bit better, to I contract back into that shape of my vagus nerve, or my vagal tone. I contract back in. The more that we regulate, the more the expansions become bigger, the contractions become smaller. Expand, contract, expand, contract. So no longer is it 10 minutes that I'm regulated, it's now a half hour. And then I contract again. And over time, we predominantly are then able to live in a state of regulation. So that's a really normal part of the process. You aren't doing anything wrong when that occurs. The other thing that I want to name is it's important to get in contact with who is the part that is experiencing that tension in your chest. That's likely a part of you, because you said when things trigger me throughout the day. So listen to the episode on parts work, but a simple thing you can do is ask the sensation, how old are you? Or if you could talk, what would you say? And you'll get really clear on who the part is when you hear what they have to say. Oftentimes you're like, oh my gosh, I used to say that when I was a kid, or I remember saying that as a teenager or in my first marriage, whatever. So it clues you into who that part is. And then once we have a sense of who that part is, that part's saying essentially, it's not safe to slow. Our work is to really embody our truest self, our adult self, your soul self that knows like it knows like it knows, that you are more than safe to follow the rhythms of nature. You are meant to follow the rhythms of nature. And in order for us to thrive, we must be doing that. Nothing in nature rushes. It all unfolds as it's supposed to. And that's really how we're meant to operate. We need rest. We need slowing. We need time where we are being nurtured. And then, of course, doing as well, but from a place of safety. And so the more that you do both of those things, the more our holistic experience in our lives is anchored in a place of regulation. So let's go to the last question that we have for today.
I would love to know your suggestions on navigating anxiety with the triggering political climate for women who have been abused, for women who have been controlled and suppressed. This is a really difficult time. I'm curious what practice you would recommend and how we can best take care of ourselves over the next few months. Thank you so much for the work you are doing.
So it's really important to understand that we talk a lot about on this podcast is that we have this brilliant threat detector in our nervous system called neuroception that's always looking out into the world to see if we're safe or not. And it has this internal database filled with all of our lived experience that it uses to decide if we are safe. And so when things happen whether it's in the political landscape or anywhere in our lives that reminds our system of something that was extremely dangerous for us in the past, or it doesn't have to be extremely dangerous, but dangerous for us, it's as if we are then re-experiencing that thing in the past in the present. So it can be really compounding, right? Let's say, whether it's what's happening, and I don't know where this person in the world is, but whether it's something happening politically or it's something happening in our own personal lives, our relationships. If that's really challenging, or maybe it's something that's not okay, that alone can be a lot. But when it also triggers things in the past, that compounding nature can be quite overwhelming, like this person is experiencing. So one of the most important things that we want to do is begin addressing the parts of us that are being reminded of something in the past that was so dangerous for us, or something that made us feel out of control, or we didn't have autonomy or agency, and connecting with that part that is re-experiencing that in the here and now. So for this person, I invite you to think about what was that thing in the past that I experienced. Now, I don't want you to go back into the event and re-experience it, but rather connecting to the part that is in distress. So who is this part of me? And what's currently happening in the world? What is it reminding that part of, this experience that I had? And so once we get clear on what that is, it's very important that we connect into our truest self, our adult self, our most powerful self. And we do parts work to comfort that part that is re-experiencing what they experienced, and provide them the attunement, safety, connection they needed, and also the ferocious protection. So feeling into what's called healthy aggression, the appropriate response to what happened to them. Let yourself actually feel that in your body in a titrated way, so a little bit at a time. And see, is there something my body couldn't do then that it wants to do now? Yeah, I want to squeeze something. I want to make this sound. I want to move this thing, so that we can take that part out of immobilization and give them agency again. And all of that helps to support that part from the past to begin having not only the safety, the connection that they needed, but the protection that they needed too. And then I invite you to bring in other competent protectors. So for me, nature is a powerful source of protection. People in my life in the past or present that have been powerful protectors for me, and bring them in, whether that's in your imagination or literally bring them in to not only support you, but that part to feel a sense of safety. Next thing that I want you to do is from your adult self, connecting into when I'm present, hearing good, what is true about what's occurring? How does this make me feel? What do I see and know is happening in the world or in the political landscape? And can I be with the emotion that's there around how I feel about this? Because what we don't want is for emotion to get trapped inside of us. So maybe I can journal about that. Can I talk about it to a friend? We want to be able to externalize it. Can that emotion have a movement to it? If my body wanted to express that emotion, how would it want to express it? And then if we are capable and able, we want to ask ourselves, how can I mobilize for myself or for others to create change around this? And it might be, by the way, it is an act of radical change to say, I'm going to go out into the world from a regulated place and I am going to connect with others. I am going to help others to not have to feel small, because maybe they've had to feel small in their lives for a variety of reasons. So I'm going to see them and I'm going to send a message from my nervous system. You are safe, you are seen, you are loved. And that shows their system, oh, maybe I don't have to become small. And so that creates agency not only for ourselves, but for others in the world around us. That could include things like, of course, volunteering or contributing financially to a cause that feels important to you. But every single one of these steps supports us to navigate the world in a really different way when there are things outside of our control. So thank you for spending this episode with me. My hope is that it supports you to slow down in your life, to enjoy the life that's in front of you, and from this place to be able to step into even more abundance than you ever thought imaginable from that sympathetic place. So much is possible when we are in a state of regulation. And I just want to also say thank you to everybody who has been a part of this 5-part series, the Somatic Starter Kit, that is really meant to support you to create really powerful change in your life here in 2025 and beyond. Each episode, if you haven't listened, please go back and listen to them when you have some time. They cover different areas of life, all really important things to facilitate the change that we want in our relationships, in our purpose, and in our life as a whole. So sending you lots of loving kindness. Remember, you make sense, all parts, always.